Everybody, low quality here. In today's video, I want to go over the new Vaal temple mechanic in Path of Exile 2. How I'm going to do this is I'm going to focus on my main issue with the mechanic, and then we're going to build out from there, comparing it to the PoE 1 version of the temple, comparing it to all other PoE 1, PoE 2 league mechanics in the past, as well as mentioning a few of the games that GGG brought up when talking about their design for the mechanic, blueprints, and Loop Hero. So to start off, the major gripe that I have with this mechanic is that it is destructive. You are progressing through the system, and there are three ways that you can actually destroy your progress. The first of which is just running it. So every single time you run the temple, when you close it, it's going to destroy something, some paths, some rooms. Yeah, doesn't matter. Something's going to break. The second way to do it is to kill the architect, which is kind of like the mini boss. You have to kill the architect once before you can go to the final boss of the Vaal temple, which is Exile. And the third way to destroy your temple is killing Exile herself. So again, those are the three ways that you can destroy your progress in the temple, one of which is literally just to engage with the mechanic. I don't know why GGG did this. It could be an experiment. It could be some form of, they were inspired by modern games, but as you're going to see later, like Loop Hero and Blueprints do not do this style of progression. They do a full wipe when you are playing any new game or new round in either of those games. It just starts fresh, really. There are certain things that you can do that maybe carry over between runs, but really the draw is that, okay, you start from zero every single time, and then you progress through, which is actually very similar to the original Vaal temple. So instead of trying to analyze why GGG decided to do what they did, I just want to talk about why I dislike it. When I'm playing PoE, a lot of it is my enjoyment of the game is tied to a sense of progression. When we're talking about the most basic form of this, that's experience. So the more you play, the less you die, the higher level your character gets. When it comes to playing hardcore, almost explicitly, if your character never dies, you're always gaining experience, and that sense of progression is actually really good from a player perspective. There's obviously a bunch of other forms of progression in ARPGs. The other major one being gear. A lot of players have a lot of opinions on gear, especially in SSF versus trade. And in PoE 2, because it's so early on in its development, obviously it's going to be less complex than PoE 1, but it still has a pretty good sense of progression when it comes to gearing. And in the gearing side of things, there actually is introduced a mechanic that is destructive. And it's probably why they went with this more destructive mechanic with the Vaal temple, because it's corruption, right? So Vaal orbs, right? When you corrupt your gear, there's a chance that you brick it. When you double corrupt, there's a chance that you delete it. That is explicitly deleting progression in the game where otherwise you wouldn't. I guess when we're talking about the hardcore example, just playing on hardcore is kind of like a similar situation. Those are player choices. You can easily play the game without engaging with that kind of mechanic. You don't need to play hardcore if you like PoE. You don't need to Vaal orb, or you don't need to single corrupt or double corrupt any of your gear to enjoy the game. But if you are engaging with the Vaal temple mechanic, you have to engage in this style of gameplay, right? You have to open the temple, place your rooms, close the temple, and watch some of it get destroyed. It isn't a player choice, it's just required, and I think it's dumb. It was a dumb move by them, and I hope they don't do this ever again. If this mechanic is going core, I actually hope it gets changed pretty drastically, and I don't know if the feedback that players are giving right now is going to really move the needle. I'm just hoping that GGG, plays the game themselves and just realizes it's really not as fun as it could be. Again, I was trying to focus on just that one main point, and for me personally, going through and running a map, only to experience like a really minor change to my map in this little Vaal ruin, doesn't really affect me that much. It's really a net neutral in terms of, do I like the mechanic, do I not? But every now and then you hit a Vaal temple, you kill some mobs. Sometimes it spawns more, sometimes it spawns a boss, but it's really inconsequential, right? all that's really doing is ticking a counter up, and then eventually you can go run the actual league mechanic, which is the Vaal Temple. In this case, you have to run 6 maps. And once again, there is no player agency around that. You can only get 1 per map, and you can only obtain these by running 6 maps. So when you look at PW1, incursions, there were actually different levers you can pull, and I'm assuming this might come from the 0.5 endgame changes. If they introduce more trees, if you make the league mechanic go core and then put it on the Atlas Passage tree, maybe it'll actually change it for the better. But in my opinion, that was a super positive version of the incursion mechanic, right? In PW1, the fact that you could run 3 incursions or go up to 4 incursions per map means you could easily clear a whole temple or build out your whole temple in 3 maps. Whereas in PW2, you have to run 6 maps before you could engage with the temple mechanic. You only get to place 6 rooms, and then when you're done, it's going to destroy some of the rooms that you've placed, the paths that you placed previously, or rooms that are just guaranteed to destabilize. So again, I'm continuing to throw a bunch of stuff at you guys, but the hope is just to keep it all under this umbrella of I hate the fact that I'm destroying any sense of progression I have, right? This does not feel like I'm using a Vaal orb, right? It feels like, and it doesn't even really compare to Ultimatum. Ultimatum is another mechanic where it was way higher risk reward, right? So you could essentially play out different rounds. I'm talking about the PW1 mechanic now. You could play out different rounds within a map. And if you got a reward that you wanted to keep, you could just go home with it. If you wanted to keep pushing until the very end, you could keep risking all of your rewards. If you died, you lost it all. It's really easy to see and engage with that kind of mechanic. As a player, there's going to be times where you think, okay, I really want to push it, and then you get punished for it, and you lose all of your progression. But that binary aspect to the mechanic makes it really easy to understand. When it comes to the Vaal Temple, players are engaging with it, and it's really vague, and I'm not really sure what GGG intended players to do. And I'm not going to overanalyze that, right? What I will talk about is a few things that the players have done with the Vaal Temple. So pretty early on, Neversink put out a video showing his strategy, which was just to place path nodes straight to Edziri, or it was straight to like the Architect and then make sure you have the Royal Access Chamber. I didn't really look into it because I actually wanted to learn and grow with the mechanic myself. But from the player side of things, it's basically saying don't actually engage with the mechanic, right? Just take paths, place them down, and then like close the temple. And because of like some backward or like the back end side of the game design, it won't destroy your one like long path. And then you can just kind of keep doing this and like keep re-rolling and running Edziri a bunch. Right, so that's like one version of what you could do. Another version is instead of going for Edziri or the Architect, just place rooms, elsewhere and try to build the largest temple that you possibly can, and then just close it. So when it comes to the destructive nature of the mechanic, closing the temple or like just running it normally is the least destructive. I think the Architect is a little bit higher. It destroys a little bit more, and then Edziri destroys even more. So there is a version of the temple, and I think GGG alluded to it, where apparently they wanted you to build out and like place every single room, and then you'd go run 6 maps, and then you just place it, the small like gaps that filled from your last run, and then just place them in again, and then just run like what is this even? Is it 9x9? So there's like 80 plus rooms in here potentially, outside of these like weird reward ones and etc. So like you can maybe run like an 80 room temple or some shit, right? Nobody wants to do that. Not a single person wants to do that. But again, I'm going to try to keep it focused. So if GGG made the normal like base rooms rewarding enough, maybe people would want to do that. But for me personally, trying to learn how to build it out myself, and then actually trying to build it out myself, and then watching all of my progression get destroyed, just made me not want to engage with the mechanic. Like, I just don't care, right? It isn't about whether or not the end state of it is actually a lot of fun to run. It isn't about whether or not it's, efficient or it makes a lot of money in trade. For me personally, it was about how much fun I was having with the mechanic. And I'm very goal oriented, so when it came to this league, I really enjoyed my experience playing through it, killing the architect, unlocking the royal access chamber, and then killing Itziri. After I killed Itziri, I lost any real urgency to engage with the mechanic. I had cleared most of the rest of the game as well at this point, so like I wasn't really motivated to do any more interaction here. And I already had enough currency in trade that, you know, I don't really care too much as doing this for like efficiency's sake. But yeah, so again, in my mind, they introduced something new to Path of Exile, either in 1 or 2. It was new and different from any of the games that they were inspired by, and I don't know why they did it in this way for this mechanic, where they should, in my opinion, never introduce any kind of destructive system like this that isn't a player choice, right? Maybe you could have ran or placed rooms that made it like have a higher chance of destruction, but like you get more loot or something. Don't even get me started. So okay, we'll save that maybe the later end of this video for my ideas. But when it comes to allowing players to choose, it's super important in the case of something like a Vaal orb or like a double corrupt. Like it can't just be something that's required to engage with new content specifically. And as well as like really cool content, like the surgeon's table that lets you replace arms and legs is actually really cool. Really cool game design idea. I hope they do more stuff like that in the future. It kind of gives you a reason to not die in softcore, but then it also is just fun to find and like engage with. It's a little bit of like a, you know, a bit of power creep that you can gain between leagues. But we'll see if they continue to do stuff like that and then stack it on top of each other. By the end of it, you're going to end up with like a D4 style. Like, I don't know, we'll see. Not the biggest fan of that either. All right, so again, I've hit on the main point enough. We can move on to the 2 games that GGG talked about. Jonathan specifically talked about Loop Hero being his inspiration for the UI, at least. I've talked about, I've messaged and like, you know, messaged in the community a few times that it just doesn't make sense. Like either Jonathan, he's done this a few times where he talks as if it's just from his perspective, but 100% somebody on the GGG team was inspired by blueprints instead. Loop Hero for the UI kind of makes sense, but for the game loop, it doesn't make sense at all. And then Blueprints is a puzzle game where how you place rooms and how rooms upgrade and kind of how you have to pick the certain direction for paths to go, and you can kind of get yourself stuck and you can kind of get blocked off from progressing through a temple. That is very similar to how Blueprints plays. The only issue is that with both the Blueprints and the Loop Hero, like I said, when you start a new run, you start fresh. And why that's really important for games like this is that you can do a Vaal Temple run. Like if this was inspired by those games, you'd be able to run a Vaal Temple and then kind of mess it up and then realize like, okay, I did poorly. I need to do better in the future. I need to learn how to engage with this mechanic better so I can get further in the temple. And then you close it and you'd go to your maps and then you come back and run a new temple, right? The progression in that form happens in your fucking mind, right? You're learning how to play the game better. You're learning how to place the rooms better. There can be also a meta progression layer tied to it. In this sense, it's the medallions. And you could have used the medallions in a way to allow yourself to get further and further every time. But instead of that, GGG added a reference to maybe the old PoE1 incursion, where you build out a temple, like you're slowly building out these rooms and upgrading these rooms. But I think that part missed the mark. I think a smaller temple, a smaller grid than this, that full wipes, and then when you run the rooms, when you run the Vaal runes on your map, either having more runes per map or allowing you to stack up more than... No, it's definitely just that. Like getting more Vaal runes or more rooms for the temple per map is super important. Having to do twice as many maps in PoE2, where the maps already take like twice as long as in PoE1, means like you have to engage with, you know, the base default game like 4 times as long before you can run a single Vaal temple. It just doesn't make any sense. So outside of that, right, the main topic I wanted to hit on, number 1 was the destructive nature. I would throw that out the window, redesign it, don't use that mechanic. Number 2, make it easier to run a Vaal temple. Make the temple smaller, make you get more rooms per map, or just Vaal runes per map. I don't know, either one. And then the final part here, I want to talk about just ways that you could improve on a style of game more similar to something like Blueprints, where you start out initially only running like maybe the first 3 rows of this temple. Then over time you build up a layer of meta progression where you can then hit the 4th row, the 5th row, the 6th row. How I feel like PoE 2 could incorporate something like that into their game is to allow for random events, which is really what they're pushing for with the Atlas. So on the Atlas, it's all about exploration. You're going from map to map as you're exploring like large sections of the Atlas. You're going to hit a tower. You're going to see a bunch of new maps at the same time. And at any point, you can see either like a unique map, an anomaly boss, a citadel, and all of a sudden, okay, that's what I'm going to target. I'm going to go get whatever you want from that map. Now you've got a goal. I'm imagining a version of the temple where when you're running the temple, you're running the one that you've built out. But maybe if you haven't had the chance to actually build out the full temple, anytime you cleared a room that wasn't connected to anything else, there's a potential for it to just automatically unlock, right? So there's a chance for you to just, if I, using my current map as an example, if I cleared this Crimson Hall, there'd just be a chance for any one of these 3 rooms to open up to a random room, right? Some elements of randomness for when you clear a room in the positive direction, right? So instead of it being destructive every single time you run it and then you clear it and all your shit just gets blown up, instead when you run it, there's a chance for you to actually unlock, and actually, okay, let's steal the blueprints entirely. Clear Crimson Hall, one of the directions gets unlocked, and then you just get to pick at that point exactly what room you're going to place and run next. And who knows, if you get really lucky, maybe you literally run a map that isn't connected to Atziri, and then all of a sudden you clear this room, you get lucky, you clear the next one, you get lucky again, and you just keep going and you run it down. That would be an awesome experience. That would be a lot of fun, I think, for players, and that's way more in the direction that I would like GGG's design to go, instead of this other direction, which is, I don't know what, right? I've never seen it from them before. I can't think of any other League mechanic that has done this, and I don't think a lot of people are really enjoying the temple, but most of the feedback I've heard is from the efficiency side, or like the why would I ever run it side of things, right? For me, every single new league that comes out, I automatically am motivated to clear like all of the content. So in this case, it was just killing the architect and killing Atziri. I think I've seen most of the extra little vault rooms here. But in general, those aren't nearly as important as kind of like doing the checkbox, kind of like clear the league content for me personally. But I know a lot of other players don't actually do that. So in the case of the Vault Temple, I don't think GGG is going to get a lot of good feedback because nobody's running it. And if they tweak it enough that it's super rewarding, I think players might live with it, regardless of whether or not it's fun. And at the moment, I don't think it's a good idea. I don't think it's fun. This is the first decision that they've made that really feels like, to me, they changed a system just for the sake of changing it. The original incursion, again, it isn't the best, but at least there were things about it that made sense to me. With this new mechanic, the rooms themselves make sense. The new currencies that they added are awesome. I liked the boss fights, and the accessibility for getting specific access to specific currencies is good. So like lineage supports, as well as high tier runes. What it allows users to get out of the game, or players to get out of the game, is a good thing. But the actual mechanic itself, I don't fuck with it at all. I would much rather have any other version of this When it comes to how GGG has been scaling difficulty, there's actually a comment that was talking about difficulty versus punishment that I engaged with recently, and just thinking about it, they also added a little bit of that to the temple, where like sometimes you can die, but then there are other instances where if you die, you lose the whole temple. That whole process is weird. I think if they did scale it up though, and it was super clear to the user that like, okay, the default temple has 6 portals, but you could like corrupt the temple and increase the difficulty and then engage with it in a different way, and then it'll be more destructive, but also, you know, you only have 1 life to do it, right? Like that's way more in line with the game design that they've already employed in PoE 2. I don't know why they didn't go in that direction. They also talked about the original mechanic being able to be turned into a currency as being kind of like a stopgap. They never actually really liked that idea. Instead, in this Vaal Temple mechanic, they made each room a currency. That I think is fine, but at the same time, I actually really enjoyed kind of the idea of encapsulating your progression in a physical thing, right? So if you were doing and running a bunch of incursions on your maps, what you get out of it is like a physical, like, okay, this is my 12 map, 12 room incursion, and there's like a double corrupt in there, so like that's valuable to me. Instead, with the new mechanic, you can't do that. You can't engage with multiple temples. You can only engage with 1 temple in a bunch of different rooms, and again, all those rooms can be destroyed and changed at any point. You do get the medallions, which are the most player agency throughout the map, but you have to be running every single room, and all these rooms fucking blow to run, so like it's just not fun. That's gonna do it. To me, this isn't even like negative. Like I don't even know or really care if the Vaal Temple goes core. I don't know what their plan was. They talked about adding like new bosses to the older mechanics, like the Breach, maybe not Breach, but like Ulroth and King of the Mist are straight from PoE 1, so they talked about changing those league mechanic endgame already. When it comes to the Vaal Temple, I would like to see more access to its Siri, because I've fought her twice this league and that was it. The other bosses I've fought a bunch more, and I would really like to fight her again, especially at lower power levels before I could just like one-shot her phase 1, all that stuff. That's going to do it though. I, again, hope you guys like the content. If you do, like, subscribe. When it comes to new league mechanics, when it comes to new game mechanics that GGG puts out, I will eventually do some kind of review like this about them. I am also super willing to go to the next step of like designing and changing the version of my Vaal Temple that maybe I'll flesh out more in a future video. But in the meantime, again, just that main point that I really wanted to focus on at the start of the video is really want to get across to GGG. Do not force players to play a mechanic that is going to be destructive. Allow players to choose to engage with that destructive part of the mechanic like you have done throughout your entire history of the game. In, you know, Vaal Orbs, double corrupts, all or nothing style mechanics, 1 portal maps, all that kind of stuff. That's more healthy for me personally, at least. I hate mechanics that I'm building out this kind of flow. I'm figuring out how to play through and engage with this mechanic, and then I click it and I run it, and then all of a sudden all the shit gets blown up. Nobody likes it. It's not fun. You can learn the meta progression and like the underlying systems underneath it in order to game it, but nobody cares about that either. Like, just don't design for that type of player. Design for people who like playing your game and just engage with the game for what it is. If you want to focus on that other archetype and make your mechanics as complex as possible, do it. Just don't do it in a way that's destructive for the base player. And you could definitely do the Vaal Temple where you could have a bunch of complexity for the sort of hardcore gamer, where it wouldn't remove from the base player's enjoyment of the league. So definitely, you know, again, I don't know if anybody at GGG will ever see any of my videos, but I'm trying to get to a point where maybe I can talk to, or maybe people will see it. But anyways, again, like, subscribe if you guys enjoy the content. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.